Okay, we're live. Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, and welcome to our third and I guess final episode of our Netflix 2016 guide. We kicked off the series with a review on series 1 to 3 of BoJack Horseman. Then we moved on to Stranger Things, where we reviewed all 8 episodes. And today we are going to be going through Luke Cage, which is the third in a series of Marvel TV series. This one directed by Cheo Hodari Coker, based on Marvel Comics character of the same name. And we've got a lot to say on this one. Now, as this is 13 episodes long, we won't be going through it episode by episode. We're going to kind of do an overview, but unlike the previous two, we will start off with some spoiler-free, as this is relatively new, and I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think we can still talk about a lot. So I'm your host, Chris Garner. Jordan, my co-host, has always taken the hour. And let's talk some Luke Cage then. By the way, I should say, for anyone who is an avid viewer of our videos, first off, thank you. You'll notice I'm in a different location. I'm crashing at my mate's this week, so I'm not at my usual place. So hopefully the audio and everything's still pleasing and visually satisfying and all that
and
nonsense.
For other avid viewers, you'll realise that I have not tidied my room today, which is why everything has been chucked on my bed.
Tate, as always, I always say
wherever the
professionals on this channel. We really.
Oh, we are so goddamn professional.
So as I said, the first part of this will be spoiler free, and as we move on, we'll let you know when we get into spoilers. So I think we should really start with not so much the Marvel movies. Let's talk about the Marvel TV shows in general.
Let's not talk about Luke Cage. Let's talk about Daredevil and Jessica Jones, because Daredevil I haven't actually fully seen yet. I've seen a couple of episodes just to kind of get a taster. I was watching it last year and I just couldn't get through it. I don't know why. I honestly have no idea why. I think it was because my dad was going through Breaking Bad at the time, and I thought, yeah, I'll switch onto that. So I have someone else to watch it with. But that's my next mission. Go back through Daredevil before Defenders.
You definitely need to go back through Daredevil.
I did watch the whole of Jessica Jones, and I completely enjoyed it way more than the episodes I saw of Daredevil. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that Jessica Jones so far is my favorite of the Marvel TV universe things. We don't talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No.
Even
if
we
they
don't
do
count
have
it.
Ghost Rider in there now.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, the CGI looks awful.
That's where the Inhumans have gone, haven't they? Because they completely cancelled that film now.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't.
Series.
Yeah, they were setting them up in the TV series, and then they kind of haven't gone on to that. And if we're looking at other Marvel TV series as well, I mean, I watched the first, I think, 6 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and just dropped off that. It really wasn't picking up. It didn't hit its stride. And I know a lot of people say, well, when it gets to episode 20-something of season 1, it gets good. I'm sorry, I'm not sticking around for a TV show for that long. I'm really not doing it.
1 hour episode.
Yeah, exactly,
saying, oh yeah, after season 1, it gets better. The only series that I can say that fully with Skins, maybe BoJack, where series 1 was and then the next series after that really kick it up.
It ramps up, yeah. And then there was the other Marvel series as well, Agent Carter, which was sort of the founding of S.H.I.E.L.D. With
I completely forgot about Agent Carter.
That's got cancelled now. I haven't watched that. I don't know how that is, but I do know the Netflix one.
Spoiler alert, she died in Civil War.
Yes, she did. She did. Off camera, he gets a text, you're right. And now he's going with the granddaughter, because that's how he roll.
If you can't go with the grandmother, go with the granddaughter. That's that's Cinema Savvy dating advice number 42.
But I do know the Netflix Marvel series, and unlike you, I have watched all the Daredevil series. There's 2 series of Daredevil. Love all the episodes, and I remember being really apprehensive before Daredevil's coming out, because this is kind of me owning up to one of my guilty movie pleasures, other than Batman and Robin. It's the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie. Don't you? I think I'm the only person in existence that kind of likes that movie.
You are the only person in existence who likes that movie outside of Boston. Seriously, you go and speak to anyone in Boston, it's like, oh yeah, Ben Affleck, we love him. And yet other than that, it's just completely trash.
It's entertaining to me. It's sort of like a fun superhero romp, and I think that Michael Clark Duncan was fantastic as Kingpin. And then Marvel kind of confirmed they were going to start doing TV series in lead up to a Defenders, kind of like how they did with the live action films leading up to Avengers. They're doing the same with the TV TV universe.
Will they ever thread into the actual Marvel Cinematic
They've
Universe?
been-
Because I would like to see them in Infinity War.
I would too, and I think a lot of fans do. And because we're living in sort of like the age with superhero films in general, really, but all started with Marvel, how everything is meticulously connected, and there are references in the Luke Cage TV show that do link to the broader scope of the Avengers. It's still not quite explicitly. They're not explicitly included in those proceedings, although the events did happen, so I guess they kind of unofficially are. I think what the question is going to be is the tone, because like Daredevil and kind of like Jessica Jones as well, this earns its R rating. It really, really does.
Oh,
and
yeah, it does.
I don't know if you put them in a movie, if you're going to have to kind of dumb them down a little bit. I don't really think you need to, because you don't need the whole kind of criminal underbelly and everything like that with gangs and drugs and violence and sex. You really don't need that. Just take the characters, and then you can continue the shows afterwards.
These series are defined by really their villains and the villains' activity.
Yeah.
If it's Thanos and he's killing random members of the Avengers, or if he's taking over the universe, believe it or not, that's not as bad as human issues. And when I say human issues, I mean like small levels of crime that build up, crime syndicates itself, people taking over people's minds. You've got ninjas as well. Human issues, you know? But like when you take these characters and you put them into a higher context, so maybe you could have like what is it? The Jakari or whatever it's called?
The Chitauri.
Is it?
Chitauri.
Yeah. Them shooting at Luke Cage and the bullets flying off or stuff like that would be interesting to see. Jessica Jones just kind of maybe doing a little bit of sly investigating, finding out a little bit more about some of the Avengers, maybe some of the villains as well in that universe. Iron Fist just going and punching someone in the face. Daredevil dressing up in red and doing nothing. Who knows?
Hey, don't talk that way about my favorite Marvel character, boy.
They could easily integrate into that universe, especially after seeing this series. These guys have a little bit more time to learn about their past, and I feel like these are more fleshed out characters than the actual Avengers themselves.
Yeah, and that's with the added benefit of having a 13-hour-long series rather than a 2-hour movie or 2.5-hour movie. Absolutely, and that's always been TV's stronger point when compared to film. And I really like your point there, actually, that you made about how these are dealing with human issues. And I would say that this, alongside Daredevil, is probably dealing with the most human issues. Daredevil still had the very fanciful superhero stuff, and this definitely does too, but it feels... it's very street level. I mean, it's Harlem, and that's one of my favorite things about this series. They get the setting completely right. They absolutely nailed that.
Without really kind of spoiling too much about the other TV shows, but Daredevil, I'm assuming, is all about coming to deal with disabilities and coming to deal with the ability to use those.
Yeah.
It's also coming to deal with community issues and fitting in, as well as holding down a job, having 2 lives. Jessica Jones was more about her like...
it's her mind, really, isn't it? Because Kilgrave is a villain that can... it's her confronting her past and finding her
as well as
also dealing with it.
Yeah, because it was also about her family and where she fits in within that family. Whilst this is definitely about community. Like, what is your role in the community? How can you use what you think is a curse to help others?
And it's kind of taking that superhero mantle and using it as a symbol. And I know it sounds like I'm quoting Batman Begins now, but whereas Batman's a villain where he uses an image to strike fear into the hearts of criminals, this is really to inspire the people. And I'm not going to give anything away in spoilers, but Mariah, who is one of the characters in this, oh God, what's her surname? I'm having a look now. Mariah Dillard, she's running for mayor. And her whole campaign is to...
Sorry, is that mayor or mayor?
Oh, mayor. She's running for mayor. And, her whole campaign is about... I think it's Make Harlem Black Again, isn't it? Or something like that. It's kind of like take Harlem back to its foundations and what made Harlem great in the first place.
Which is a good... It's, to be honest, that kind of community, because she was more like, okay, we need to unite the community together against things that we don't understand. Now, I can completely understand that from a standpoint, especially with like the Chitauri, is it?
Chitauri,
coming down the previous year into Chitauri into New York, and they mentioned that a couple of times in there.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool.
It's the way that she goes about it.
And
It's the way that the characters go about it. In a lot of these series, the message or what they want, their end game, is good. You can understand it, and that's why the villains are so good in these shows. However, it's the way they go about it. Going with Jessica Jones, the Purple Man or Kilgrave, take away the name, he really just wants his life back to how it was. He wants to be in a loving relationship, and he wants to feel part of a family. The way he goes about it, however, is completely wrong.
yeah, that's kind of like Kingpin from Daredevil as well. And actually, out of all the series, if we're going to compare any to Luke Cage, Daredevil is almost beat for beat the same as Luke Cage in many respects, even down to the villain, and especially an episode which we'll get to in spoilers, which is probably the most pivotal episode of the entire series. But in that, you've got Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, who is this criminal overlord, and he's doing all these despicable actions, but he's doing it with the best intentions for Hell's Kitchen. And it's an awesome parallel I love heroes and villains where you can do this. This is why Joker and Batman are my favorite, where they're like opposite sides of the same coin, and they both kind of want the same goal, but it's how they go about it in a different way. And that's sort of similar with this, with Mariah, and even with like Cottonmouth and other villains in it as well. Because this series definitely does have a lot of villains, and we'll get to that later. The other series have felt much more focused. Daredevil series 1, you just kind of have Wilson Fisk, and that's it. You have a few of his like bodyguards and everything like that, but it's really Fisk is the central pillar of the antagonist role in that. You've got Kilgrave in Jessica Jones. In Daredevil series 2, you kind of have Punisher, although he's really an anti-hero. And then it's really sort of like the whole ninja side is the other villain side of that. And then there's kind of three, I would say. There's three major villains in this particular series.
I'd say four. I would happily say that there's four major villains in this series.
But
I could point them out, but we'll do that in spoilers because some of them are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just sort of go back to like the shows, and then we'll get into Luke Cage now. Daredevil, I absolutely loved. One of my biggest concerns with, as I said, was that they would lose the dark tone of Daredevil and make it more in line with the movie universe so that they could translate well to it. Well, I watched episode 1 and I completely just threw that to the wayside because the tone was completely on point. It was violent. It felt lived in. It felt really, and I hate using this term all the time because it's thrown around all the time, but gritty. But it really, really did. It made you, just as a viewer, it felt, I could feel the fear as like just the shots of walking through the city. You didn't know what was going to happen. And Daredevil doesn't even get in the classic costume until the final episode of that series, but I didn't care because they completely got that character right. And Daredevil is still one of my favorite TV shows ever made. I think they nailed that. Jessica Jones, I've only seen once, and I've seen the Luke Cage series and Luke Cage first featured in Jessica Jones. I would quite like to go back to it and see how the two tie together. I know
there was very quickly before we do move on to Luke Cage. The thing about Jessica Jones, which I really liked, was the narration. It felt like it was a noir, and I'm a sucker for noir fix. I really am, and it gave it that kind of feel that I haven't seen with a superhero film in a long time, since probably Watchmen.
Yeah.
Or Sin City tried it, and Sin City did an okay job, but Watchmen really did nail the kind of noir feel. Felt like a modern noir in sorts. However, this really did feel it was good. I quite like Luke Cage. We'll talk about it a bit more now. I actually have the IMDb up, even though the IMDb kind of it's out of order, and we spoke about this beforehand, where throughout the series it's told in a running order, but there's also flashbacks all the way through. This kind of puts it in order of what actually takes place. But given super strength and durability by a sabotaged experiment, this man escapes prison to become a superhero for hire. Now, I'd say that was out of ordered synopsis because you don't actually find out about the experiment until episode 4. And he doesn't.
I don't know Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know if it's alluded to in Jessica Jones about the experiment. As I said, I've only seen it once, so...
He's talked about being experimental, he doesn't talk about escaping from jail.
Yeah. And, but yeah, it does a good job because it doesn't throw you immediately in with the origin story. It really does. Daredevil did that. Jessica Jones, to me, did feel more like an origin story because... as she recollects her past, we're watching that with her as it progresses. So you're like reaching back to her memories as she does. Daredevil was very non-linear in how it was told, and this is very much the same. But I think it completely works for the show. It didn't throw me off at all or anything like that. One thing I do want to talk about, though, and I think this will get us more into the review. So as an overall, because basically it's like a 13-hour-long movie, Tate, what is your biggest positive of Luke Cage and also your biggest negative, still without giving anything away?
My biggest positive was the way they dealt with the villains. And actually, I'm going to say villain.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the villains in the series, because I say there are 4, were handled... it could have been done better. They could have been fleshed out more. But one of the villains in particular, I think, is the best Marvel villain I've seen put.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it just, the way that they did his character, the way they introduced him into the scenes, and like towards the end of the series, you felt for him. You really did. And it made a character feel more human in a series where it is very human. You got a little bit more fleshed out about his past, and it is something that you can do in a 13-hour film. You can actually flesh out a character's past and bring forward that. And he was a very complex character, and the way they dealt with the different complex characters in the series was very well done. However, some of the characters weren't, this is my negative, some of the characters weren't fleshed out enough.
Yeah.
You've got to balance it out, especially when you've got 13 hours to play with. You've got to maybe even introduce some of the characters, maybe have whisperings. I can't remember what series did it. I'm going to go with, even though I haven't seen it in a while, and just because it's topical, Walking Dead. You have an entire series where they don't mention Negan. Like, his name just kind of gets whispered every now and then, but you don't actually see him until, like, 20 episodes after, like, his name is mentioned almost every episode. Maybe for the later on characters in the series, but no, it was very kind of, oh, it's this character, and then the next episode he gets introduced, and it's like, oh, well, that's not really a shock or any anticipation to see this character. Whilst with the other characters introduced from the very, very start, it felt fleshed out. You felt like you got to know that character and you had a connection with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll kind of agree with you there. My biggest positive is the villain, more specifically for me, Cottonmouth, played by, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Mahershala Ali. I thought he was fantastic. I was watching an interview before we did this. He actually won an Emmy for appearing in House of Cards, which is a series I haven't seen, but I've heard phenomenal things for, and it's one I definitely want to get to. And not just with this character, but just Luke Cage in general was a superhero I really wasn't familiar with. With shows like Daredevil, I knew the character. I know a lot about the stories. I know a lot about his just identity and everything like that. Because to me, he is kind of like the blind Marvel equivalent of Batman, and I think that's why I like him, because Batman's my favorite superhero overall. But for example, Jessica Jones was a completely blind watch, and tonight when I see Doctor Strange, which we'll have a review for later, that will be another one. And I like that Marvel are bringing in these lesser-known characters so that we can finally get to see them on the big screen or even the small screen like this. So I think that the villains overall and most of the performances were pretty much on point, and I guess that kind of also bleeds into the actual setting. I think they completely nailed the world that this was set in, just the whole street and just urban chaos and everything like that. I think they really nailed that. My biggest problem, and I kind of have two. I'm going to go with probably what is the biggest because it's the name of the show. It's honestly the personality of Luke Cage himself, played by Mark Coulter, and I don't think he's a bad actor at all. I really think it's just the persona they've given Luke Cage. I haven't read any Luke Cage comics, but I know when it initially started, it was at the height of blaxploitation. Maybe someone can correct me in the comics, but I want to say it was the first ever black superhero, at least in Marvel, I think.
Yeah, he was.
So
he wasn't. He was the first ever black superhero, but not the first black superhero brought to screen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of a huge deal, and race definitely plays a massive, massive part in this series. But I think in the old days of the comics, which I guess just stands testament at the time, he was kind of like a Black Dynamite character, where he'd be dropping one-liners, he'd be really sassy, and he does get a few one-liners in this. Sweet Christmas, for example, which I'm guessing is probably one of his regular lines in the comic books.
Maybe.
But he's just so goddamn stoic. There's there really wasn't anything to this guy, and because the villains just completely outshine him in more or less every respect, I didn't really have much connection to him as a character as the protagonist throughout this series. Now, with stuff like Daredevil, for example, I love the character of Matt Murdock. I think he's played phenomenally. His friend Foggy as well. And then you also have Wilson Fisk, played brilliantly by Vincent D'Onofrio. And you like both of them. In this, I really just didn't have much attachment to Luke Cage. And if I'm going to throw out another negative there, and I think we're both in agreement on this, the series kind of ramps up to like from episode 1 to episode 7. And then it does kind of plateau and just completely drop off towards the end of the series. Now, not to say that the end is bad.
I'm going to say that the episode... I was going to say it rises up to episode 7. I'd say that it goes up, peaks, drops a little bit, then peaks again, and then it plateaus, and then it drops off at episode 11, with the final 2 episodes, I would say, being probably my least favorite in the series.
And this is, I didn't have a problem with this at all in Daredevil, because I thought that was justified a 13-episode series. I kind of had it in Daredevil series 2, but I especially had it in Jessica Jones, and I think that in terms of, although the themes are more in line with Daredevil, I think the structure of this show is more in line with Jessica Jones, in that I thought the same with that. I thought it ramped up, and then they introduce other villains, and then it kind of gets muddled, and then it sort of finds its footing a little bit towards the end again. And it was a shame, because when I was watching it, and I'm not going to go into spoilers, but something massive happens in episode 7, which shocked me. I didn't see it coming. I thought the character was going to be in it all the way through until the end. And when it happens, it did catch me off guard, but then it does kind of throw the entire series into a weird state of limbo. And I guess that's what they were going for, because all the characters do kind of go through that, because that's around the stage in the show where Luke's trying to find his identity more, and you've got other figures rising to power. But as a narrative, it felt disjointed somehow, and I don't know if this series would have benefited from just being 10 episodes, maybe shave off a couple towards the end, really make it focused and knit into a 10-episode series, or even an 8-episode series. But yeah, and that was a kind of shame for me, because I think, as we said, it peaked at 7, and then it really never hit the heights of what had come before it.
I agree. I feel like we need to do a very quick, brief overview of all the episodes, but that means that we will have to go into spoilers. Yes. Sadly.
One thing before we do go into spoilers, though, I guess we can do an overview. I want to say the music in this series is fantastic. Not only the score, which is done with like a very kind of 70s funk, blaxploitation kind of music, and I thought that completely worked for it. But just like every episode, you've got a new single. There's the club. It's called Harlem Paradise, I believe, the club in the show. And they have a different musical act there every night, every episode of the series. And it just gives the series so much texture and richness. And it's so, like, music is so in Harlem's history and the community and everything like that. And it completely works for it. I'm not even a fan of that kind of music. If you can see my shirt, you can probably guess what kind of music I am into. But I was starting to listen to some rap and hip hop after this series, because my favorite song in it is probably Hail to the King by Jidenna. Just the editing, it's almost like a music video every episode, but I love the music in it. And my overview is that I think it's still a fantastic series. I think it's definitely some of the best TV out there. What they managed to do with a superhero property on the small screen now is phenomenal. And I like where it sets up. I want to see more of the character, and I can't wait to see him in Defenders. The problems really are some characters, some of the villains maybe aren't as fleshed out as I would like, especially Diamondback, for example, and the narrative itself does kind of peak with 7 and then falls a little flat, but it's not awful, and I did really, really enjoy it.
Okay. Moment of Truth, episode 1. Spoiler, by the way.
Spoilers now.
I don't think this episode got the show running hard. I think the first episode, it bumbled along, quite slow-paced. It really only ramped up at the very, very, very final moment of the episode, but that's like 50 minutes in. So for the start, it's 50 minutes of literally Luke Cage walking around. You kind of get introduced to Cottonmouth, but he doesn't actually do anything. You get introduced to like some of the other characters. I can't remember what the detective's name is. I need to get it up. Misty Knight. You get introduced to Bobby, but not too much.
And Shades as well.
Shades, yep. But no one really gets properly introduced. It feels like episode 2 really does introduce the characters and flesh them out a little bit more, but episode 1 really did feel like let's just go for a nice brief walk through Harlem. I don't think episode 1 is probably, I'd say, is the third weakest episode in the entire series, and that's not good for a TV show starting. I would happily rank all the episodes right now. By the way, the last 2 episodes are my least favorite of the entire series, with the last episode being my least favorite of the entire series. But it didn't get the show running. It didn't get me hooked as much as maybe Daredevil's first 2 episodes. I was like, yeah, I can really get into this. And then I don't know why I stopped. I need to go back to it. But Jessica Jones, I was hooked immediately as well in the first 2 episodes. The first episode alone was just, it didn't connect me even slightly.
And that's kind of my rule of thumb for TV shows. I always give it 2 episodes, and I usually find it's better if you watch those episodes back to back, so you get a sort of like longer stay with the characters and the situation and everything that's happening. I'm going to kind of disagree with you there. I really, really liked episode 1, and I was pretty much hooked from episode 1. And as I was watching it, I was like, okay, they've got the tone right. It's completely in line with the other Netflix series. I like where this is setting up. I love Cottonmouth. That parallel where Misty's at the bar and sort of like looking up to the box at the top where Cottonmouth is and all his cronies and everything like that, and Luke Cage is the barman. I love the setting of the nightclub and Pop's barbershop. I really like Pop as a character and their back and forth in there. I don't know, I thought episode 1 did a really good job, but I agree that if you're going to watch it, it's probably best to watch episodes 1 and 2 back to back, because I think you get a much more stronger emotional connection to everything that's involved, and it feels like a much longer whole. And I should also say that with Netflix being what it is, it's very easy to binge watch TV shows, and I did for Daredevil, and I did for Jessica Jones. This one took me slightly longer. Not to say that it was a bad series or anything like that, but I just don't know what it was. I think I hit 7, and then the lull of it, I kind of just watched one here and there every couple of days, and that's probably why it's took so long for us to get this review out, because it has been out for quite a few weeks. But no, I quite liked episode 1.
Thing is, though, episode 2 had so much going on, and I know that episode 2 of Daredevil, from what I've seen so far, was my favorite because it had the fight scene, which was very reminiscent of the Raid in it. This episode had the death of Pops. This episode had Luke Cage actually becoming the hero for hire for the first time. It engrossed you into the series. Even the plot synopsis on Netflix saying Luke is pulled in deeper into the fight. That's what you have. And we've already really been given a character introduction of Luke in Jessica Jones. And it feels like it's just another character introduction episode.
You can't rely on that, though, because he was a cameo in that, and some people may not have watched that show. You
call him a cameo. He was so heavily involved in that series. He was in almost every episode.
Some people, like us diehard fans of Marvel and everything like that, will watch everything that's put out, but you've got to... Like, some person might watch a trailer for Jessica Jones and go, that's not my thing. See one for Luke Cage. Oh, okay, this is more my thing. And if you don't have any kind of introduction to him at all, it's going to start the show off on a really, really weird kilter. You do absolutely need a character intro, especially if he's helming his own show with this one.
But there is another thing that he did... Like, in the reintroduction, he did mention it a couple of times about Jessica Jones.
Yes.
Also mentioned that he's moved from Hell's Kitchen to Harlem. Is he going to move back to Hell's Kitchen for Defenders?
That'll be it. I don't actually know where they're going to set Defenders.
I think New York, just in general.
That seems to be the favourite spot, doesn't it, for Marvel?
No, because Iron Fist lives in Manhattan, if I know my Marvel. Daredevil is definitely Hell's Kitchen. I didn't realize Jessica Jones was Hell's Kitchen as well, but I think she might move just to kind of get away from her past. So she might move to, I don't know, Brooklyn or somewhere like that.
Yeah. I kind of want to go through all the references to all like the links to the Marvel universe at the end, apart from one which is kind of plot with this one, obvious, with the Chitauri. Yeah. What I will say is, though, I knew it was going to happen with Pop. I knew it was going to happen. When they got in that car, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And really, this is where we start to see Shades, deceitful backstabber, ass licker, whatever you wanted to say. But he is really like one of the weaseliest characters I've ever seen in a TV show.
I'd
He
say
is like
scheming. I wouldn't
Littlefinger.
say Weasley. I'd say that it's played throughout the entire series, but the game of chess in the shop, he is yes, whilst everyone else at the time was playing a game of checkers.
Yeah.
They were just trying to jump over. Okay, they're in front. Now jump over. And he's just playing it tactically at the sidelines. And it shows throughout the entire series because I'd say that he is the one with power at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He truly
Definitely.
is.
And he gets quite
He
a
is
lot
the
of
one
credit
pulling
as well.
the strings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when Diamondback takes over, he is still pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
But we'll move on to... We've done episode 2 where Pop dies, which was a good episode, and it showed that even though Luke Cage is bulletproof, he can't save everyone.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a point I want to make, and sort of that's more sort of like the mental side to it, but the physical side, what I really liked about this series was and by the looks of the Logan trailer as well, what I like when they take a character that is indestructible, their power is that they're bulletproof or they can't be stopped, and they make them vulnerable. Because if you have them be bulletproof and indestructible all the way through, every single action scene that takes place is just rendered moot because you know they're going to make it out of it fine. With characters like that, they're often very boring, and I think that's why a lot of people find characters like Superman very boring. Because they just think he's perfect, nothing can stop him. But when you can break someone emotionally, and that's kind of what Diamondback wants to do towards the end part of this series. He's planning everything out. He's almost like an army general. He says, like, I guess it's like Bane though with The Dark Knight Rises, like, then you have my permission to die. Like, once you've gone through this absolute hell that I want to put you through. And really, this is the first knock for the character of Luke Cage. And I would say that Pop, although he's not really referred to towards the middle part of this series, they bookend it at the end with his speech, which may be a little bit overused, like they really want to make it a catchphrase, but forward, always forward, which was kind of his motto in life, and it's what he lived his life by. And he was kind of like a father figure to a lot of people on the streets, because it says that he owns, this barber shop, and he takes in kids to stop them getting into a life of crime. He tries to show them a way, shows them like a working life, everything like that. And it sucks that he had to die in episode 2. I would have liked a lot more of him, but I guess that does set a good foundation.
Even though he died in episode 2, and I know they do a couple of flashbacks, I would have wanted a few more flashbacks of Pops, giving him wisdom throughout the entire series.
I don't know if they'd have been a bit arbitrary, though, just like a kind of lost moment where he gets a flashback relating to a particular part in his life. I'd have liked more flashbacks of Pop as a youngster in the gang with Cottonmouth. Because, I mean, if you're just looking at the character of Pop, there's so much just to that one supporting character. There's really
They don't even delve into it.
No.
They just kind of very scratch the very surface. And the same with Cottonmouth. We start to finally understand him as a character just as he kind of gets killed off. But we'll talk about that. Next episode, who's going to take the weight? This was really the first time that we actually see Luke use his powers properly, I'd say. Where he literally just walks into the, what's it called, attics? Is it Christmas attics, or is it? He walks into the place with a load of money. The place that Mariah's holding up all their money.
Yeah, she needs it for her political scheming, and I think she owes money or something, doesn't she? She's took out a loan on something for a political campaign. She needs to pay it off.
A small loan of $1 million.
Oh, yeah. Oh, topical.
But he literally he goes in.
Yeah, he's trying to shut down Cottonmouth, and he says like he's going to hit him where it hurts. He's going to hit him in his wallet. So he's taking out all these caches of cash, I guess. He's trying to shut all them down to close down his operations, and it's really pushing Cottonmouth to the limits.
It's probably the funnest scene in the series, where he just kind of sticks his music in, hip-hop blaring, he just kind of swaggers in, and then just beats the crap out of everyone. And just walks out, not with all the money, just one bag. Just enough to keep the barbershop going. And that is also... Is that the episode with the funeral, or is it a later episode?
It's difficult for me to... As I said, I've only gone through the entire series once. I do need to go through it again. I tend to just look at it as kind of a whole, like one big story with the Marvel Netflix series rather than individual episodes. So I don't know if you want to kind of do it as an overview from this point on, or if you still want to go through all the episodes.
No, I'm just going to go very briefly for each episode, because the next episode My favorite. It's not the best episode of the series, but it is definitely my favorite. And this is the origin story episode. This is so how did he get his powers? And it's basically a prison fighting scheme set up by the prison guards. He gets beaten up pretty badly in one of the things because he's trying to uncover it. He gets dunked into this experimental tank of weirdness, acid and weird things, and that explodes because the security guard stops the procedure and he gets his powers. But on the flip side, it's an episode where he's stuck in the rubble with the Chinese takeaway owner. And it's really nice. It's a really nice episode where it's kind of reflecting items from his past. He's remembering his past. He's also trying to escape from this kind of enclosed area. And he's telling his story, and it's just a well done episode.
Mm. Yeah, and I like
a lot of good parallels in that episode.
I was just going to talk about the parallel in the editing where he gets out of the rubble, and as he's punching out of the concrete to get out of the prison. I thought that was brilliantly handled. I love the origin story of that. We also get to see Shades again as well. And we also get introduced, and it's kind of the origin of his relationship with Dr. Reva Connors, who I believe, we see her die in Jessica Jones, which is his past. This is another reason I want to go back to Jessica Jones, because it's been a while since I've seen that series, and I recognised her, and I thought, is that the one who Kilgrave, when he infects Jessica's mind, she punches and kills and sets up for that whole character arc? And I think it is. But now I know about Dr. Reva Connors, I'd like to go back to Jessica Jones and see the continuation of that, because throughout this, that whole relationship kind of just gets thrown into the air when we get that revelation towards the end that she knew all along exactly what she was doing.
But I feel like, he will now finally forgive Jessica, because throughout the entire Jessica Jones series, he doesn't fully forgive her. He puts up with her because he knows that she's a vital resource and they can help each other. Fully gone over that. And I think now he would have.
Yeah, and also at the end, we sort of get a setup for him meeting Daredevil, Matt Murdock as well. So Defenders is really shaping up to be something special, and just you bringing that up there, I didn't even think of that. As I said, it's been a while since I've watched Jessica Jones, but that's another reason why I want to go back to it, because I do think it fleshes out all that stuff really, really well. And not only bringing in old relationships, but started new ones as well. I'm not sure if this is the episode where Claire comes back into it. I think that might be the next one, isn't it?
No, Claire comes back into it next episode.
Yeah.
No, 2 episodes, because the next episode is Just Get a Wrap, which is basically Cottonmouth goes, want you to go and like rob every single shop, and Luke just kind of deals with smaller threats in that episode.
Yeah.
He doesn't really do too much that episode. The next episode after that, Claire comes back, and I like Claire as a character. You saw her in one episode of Jessica Jones. I hadn't seen her in Daredevil.
She's been in all of them.
Stage.
She's been in all of them. She's kind of like the unofficial Agent Coulson of this, where she's like the one.
Oh no, she is going to become Nick Fury in the Defenders. I'm pretty sure of it. She's the only person who's been across every single series, and I feel like she's going to be involved in Iron Fist somehow.
And Claire's just a really, really relatable character. She's kind of an amalgamation of 2 Marvel characters into one. Claire Temple, who's a romantic interest of the Luke Cage character, and a character called Night Nurse, who is a nurse who heals superheroes and superpowered people. So they've kind of taken both those traits and merged it into one character, which I'm completely fine with. It makes sense. Saves you the trouble casting 2 different people when you can have them provide the same role. And in all the series, I mean, she was first introduced into Daredevil. She was quite a big part in that. And then she says in that, like, things are getting too weird, I'm going to move uptown or something like that. I'm guessing she means Harlem, I guess. Or maybe she's still in Hell's Kitchen, and then she comes back in Jessica Jones. She's in Daredevil Series 2, where the ninjas attack the hospital, which is referred to in this, where she talks about seeing someone with like an autopsy cut and they were still alive. They'd come back from the dead. That's Daredevil Series 2. And in this, and really with this is probably out of all the series, the one where she gets the most to do. She is a main character in this series, even though she doesn't come into it until kind of like the midway point.
She is, yeah. She really does. It's more of like when she's on screen, you're actually interested and you want to hear about her story.
Yeah.
Like, she always is involved and she's always kind of listening in. And that kind of character and the interactions that are made there, it's just really well done.
Really good writing as well in this series.
Okay.
Well, at least towards the end.
Really good writing in the next episode, which is, I think we're agreeing here, the best episode. Is it your favorite episode as well?
Episode 7, Manifest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, this episode, this is all about Cornell Stokes, all about him and Cottonmouth. Because throughout the series, we'd seen parts where in his downtime he's kind of playing at the piano, and you think that's quite a nice, quirky character trait. It's not until this episode where this really, really makes sense and just gives so much gravitas to everything that's come before it. And I don't know if he'll be nominated for an Emmy at all with this, but with this episode, I think he absolutely deserves it. I thought he was fantastic, and I was sort of alluded to this earlier, where I talked about the parallels between this series and Daredevil. There's an episode in Daredevil, I think that one's episode 8, which is all to do with the origin and history of the Wilson Fisk character, Kingpin. And again, it's a very tragic childhood upbringing. A lot of violence set upon him. He's sort of like forced. You've got the childhood innocence offset with an overbearing parent who's forced him into this really just like horrible world of violence. And this is pretty much all crime with his family. It's like the unofficial sort of like Harlem Mafia.
It's so well done, though, because you have the entire scene where his mum has Mariah in the room, and Mariah's just kind of doing her homework, and she's doing her own life to have a political career kind of flattened out, but he wants to do music.
Yeah.
And his cousin wants to push him towards music. And in fact, his uncle, I think it was even willing enough to go over and speak to the rivaling gang to try and put up a truce so that they could kind of get out of that life and so that he could have a life. And he is given an ultimatum, and you should never really give a child of that age an ultimatum because it will completely destroy themselves internally and externally. And I feel like whenever he plays the piano throughout the series, after watching this episode, you just think it could have been so different. Because he's given the choice between having a career as like a musician or having a career as a criminal, and the choice is made by either shooting like his uncle, not just like a person who is willing to give him an opportunity, a family member who is really close to, or obeying with his mum and his sister's commands.
And his uncle is the one that sees him as well. He sees the talent that he possesses. And even when Cornell Stokes in the present time is playing the piano, I think he knows that. And I think he's taken back to that time, and he does recollect of what could have been if events had been different.
I see regret in this episode. I see a lot of regret for his career. And in fact, towards the end of the episode, before he actually says, I can't remember what he actually says, but it's almost as if he is apologizing and he just wants to give up and leave. And in the previous episodes, I think episode 5 and episode 6, he is so hell-bent on killing Luke Cage. And I think in episode 7, he realizes what's going on, and he relates to Luke Cage's character in some way, shape, or form, and he would rather take his side and just leave it all behind and just take the money and run and try and live out the rest of his life as much as he can. But Mariah won't let him, because that will lose all of her power at that stage. And Mariah, I think it's Shades.
Yeah.
At the start of this episode, Shades says, "You don't know what you are. You don't know how powerful you can be." And this really is a true manifestation, believe it or not, episode title name right in there, of that power. Yeah.
And it's not just a great character arc for Cornell Stokes, kind of rounds everything off for him. But in a very brutal fashion towards the end, but also for Mariah. I mean, you talking about the bit when they're at the kitchen table, she's studying for her career, he's playing the piano. The mother, I think, is on her side, isn't she? She's kind of,
the mother can see. The mother is power hungry. She's a gang leader. She can see that a political career can be useful as it gains more power, from a communal stance and also from a gang-related stance. Playing music does not do that. And that's why she gives that ultimatum. She can see that a political career, I can see how that helps. That is useful. Whilst on the other side of the spectrum, it is completely unrelated. It is almost like she sees it as a hobby, an unuseful one that doesn't help the family, one that doesn't help the business. And that's why she takes that decision.
And I don't want to kind of like get into like the all ins and outs of what goes on in our world and everything like that because we're just reviewing a TV show. But I do think it is a sort of like a very heartbreaking and tragic commentary on what many youngsters do go through, especially like growing up in the projects and things like that, where they are
A good
forced into
a good film about that is City of God.
Mm. That's the one I need
In
to
one
see,
moment,
yeah.
your life changes, and that is a true reflection, and it's probably the closest thing that I could relate to this episode, the closest film of any sorts.
Mm.
But really, that is a split-second decision, changes everything in that.
And as I say, I haven't
After
read the
this
comic
episode-
book, so I don't.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just say I haven't read the comic
Yeah.
book, so I don't know how close this is to Cottonmouth's origin. But it's so good because you were talking about you feel sympathy for him. Like it's almost like you almost well up at the end because you feel really bad for this guy, what he's had to go through. But let's be honest,
I
Cornell-
forgive the character at the end.
I would say Cornell Stokes is a despicable human being. The stuff he's done
Yeah.
prior to this, for like the previous 6 and a bit episodes, is
Yet
unforgivable.
in
Yet
episode
in one
3,
episode-
in episode 3, you see it. You see him. He says, "Look, they weren't meant to shoot up Pop's shot. I apologize for that. That is my fault. I take responsibility. I loved him as much as you did. I saw him as a brother to me." And that's kind of almost a precursor to this episode because you see that he does have sympathy and he has regret there.
Mm.
Not
And
only
Pop
that, but
shows up in the episode, doesn't he? He comes to that.
yeah. And not only that, but as soon as Luke goes in and steals the money from, I think it is Christmas Attucks, that's where he becomes hell-bent on Luke Cage because he's like, "Look, I tried to apologize, tried to go that way, but now you're really messing with my life."
Mm-hmm.
And he can understand why he did it, but at that point he's got a gang-minded mindset. In episode 7, he's almost forgiving and forgiven.
Yeah.
And I feel like he could have very easily walked away there.
And I think he was about to walk away, in all honesty.
He was.
And we talk about Shades as well throughout and how his scheme, and this is where it really comes to fruition, and we see the power of this. It's almost like he almost plays the Lady Macbeth character in this moment,
Yeah.
where Mariah is the role of Macbeth, where she's got this blood on her hands, she's freaking out, she doesn't know what to do, and he's the calm voice, like, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to take care of it, this is how we're going to sway the story, this is what's going to happen."
Yeah.
And he does bring up a good point towards the latter part of this series, and I guess Diamondback kind of echoes it as well, where he says that Cornell had lost his edge. And in this game, you need to maintain that edge at all times, otherwise you are going to get overthrown. And this is a constantly changing power struggle between all the factions involved, massively so, all the way throughout. And I don't want to, I guess this is a kind of spoiler for the film Scarface, but there's a moment in that film with Al Pacino where he's risen to the top and he's given this task of where he needs to tail a car and blow it up with some kind of political figure inside, and the political figure's wife and kids get in the car, and he straight up refuses because he has that moral code. He doesn't want to kill women or children.
Yeah.
And in that one moment, because he wasn't willing to go the extra mile and just completely lose himself in this line of work, it ultimately leads to his downfall. And that's kind of the same in what I see with Cornell Stokes, in that he has maintained this level, and he even maintained it even with Luke Cage around and everything like that, but it's really his own past which weakens him as a character. And I think we should talk about Mariah in this moment, where she completely flies off the rails, and that was brilliantly acted by her as well. I'm going to find the actress now.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Because there are so many characters in this. Let's have a look.
Mariah was played by Alfre Woodard.
Yeah. And, I thought she was, because before this, she was kind of the two-faced politician, which we've seen in loads of things before. But it wasn't until the moment where...
She was the judge from Primal Fear.
I haven't seen Primal Fear. But,
that's that's a good film.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I will
film.
will add that one to the ever-increasing list of movies I need to watch.
I want to say it was Edward Norton's first film or breakout film.
Mm. Oh, wow.
But,
so I'll put that right underneath City of God, because City of God is absolutely one I need to watch. It's on all the list of best movies. But it's only in the moment where Cornell brings up the fact where, he was saying, like, you were throwing yourself at my uncle, you were, and you wanted it. And it's in that moment where I think she realizes that it was ultimately her actions which led to his death in a very brutal fashion. As someone that Cornell respected, I think that someone she respected and someone she didn't want to see die, even though I think out of the two, she maintained her cool when he was shot because she went with the story. And she knows in her heart that she probably was throwing herself at him, and ultimately the blood's on her hands as well, even though she didn't have to pull the trigger in the process.
Yeah.
And she just completely flies off the rails. And when she pushes him out the window and then goes down, not only that, but also beats him repeatedly with a mic stand.
All of the rage that's been building up, all the frustration that she has not been getting what she wants. And I feel like that scene, she almost felt like a spoiled brat. She hadn't got what she wanted, definitely. So she took it into her own hands, and she realized, oh, I've actually got the power to take it into my own hands.
And I think
that was her realization.
It's great how she plays it because it's at her height of being her most empowered, but it's also at the point she's the most vulnerable.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like a double-edged sword in the same moment, and it's perfect play. And we've just seen how long we've talked on this one episode, and I think that speaks volumes of how it's our favorite one.
Let's just talk a little bit. Now we're going to talk a little bit less about the following episodes because I did not like them.
Yes, same. And also, my showing of Doctor Strange is in about 35 minutes, so I haven't got much longer left on this one. But we'll breeze through it very quickly.
You know, I'm going to go ahead and say, Blowing Up the Street, DWYCK, and Take It Personal can all be bundled into one episode.
Yes. Which is the episode where they're kind of holed up in the nightclub?
That is the one after that. But very quickly, I'll just go very quickly over. Luke Cage gets shot by a Judas bullet, which is this new bullet which can actually penetrate his skin. He basically starts dying in that episode. And then the next episode, he runs into Diamondback, which is the first time we see him. And for some strange reason, I don't know whether it's the same in the comics. I really don't know. But he could have been just a brilliant solo villain. He really could. But they had to add in the family edge. He's like, oh, you're my brother. I'm like,
that's
not believable.
That isn't the comics.
I know, but the way that the character was introduced, it was so unbelievable at that stage. It's like, really? He's his brother? Are you kidding me? So just so happens that one of them became a superhero and one of them became the supervillain that produces bullets that kills the superhero.
It's poetic. It's a comic book. It's poetic. But I will agree. Tacked on is probably the best word, and I think that Diamondback could have absolutely set up to be the villain of his own series when it comes to Luke Cage Season 2. And they kind of still tease that at the end because we realise he's still alive and he wants even more revenge. It's all about revenge. But this is where I talked about
Luke Sorry, I was going to say Luke and what's-her-face, Claire, go to visit the scientist who made Luke. And he basically, I'm going to say, accidentally saves his life. Yeah.
He's kind of mad scientist guy, isn't he? He felt very, very, very two-dimensional in this role.
Through trial and error.
Like science!
And then they go back and they try and take over a nightclub to save some people in the nightclub because they're holding an anti-Luke Cage rally.
It's the story they've spun, isn't it? Mariah says that we're framing Luke Cage for the murder of my cousin Cornell Stokes. And it's like this whole smear campaign against him.
I'm going to go ahead and say that Now You're Mine is the last good episode of the series. I quite liked it.
I liked elements of all the other episodes.
Holed up in a building. It felt like a very compact, very well, like nicely bow-tied episode because you have the dynamics between the people on the outside, the police, who are kind of getting conflicting stories from conflicting people. They've got what they've kind of learned over the last few weeks of the anti-Luke Cage thing, the fact that Luke Cage went in and that's when gunshots started being fired. They've got information coming through from the hostages being let go. They've got Mariah, who is also spinning her own tail on the outside. You've also got Diamondback, who's spinning his own tail on the inside. You've got the differences between Misty, who's locked in there with Luke and has been shot, and them trying to save her life. You've got the whole what's her face? Claire, kind of trying to escape from the hostage situation. Then you've got Luke coming up with all of these decisions in his head on how he can make this advantageous to him, how he can get re-involved, and how he can spin a positive image onto it.
Yeah, and this is where I was saying at the start, I don't know if it was on the recording or before, but we kind of have a split thing on this episode. For me, I can see the point of how it is a self-contained episode because it all is set in that one setting. It kind of puts you in the heat of the action, in the heat of the moment, as you're trying, as you were saying, like Luke Cage is coming up with solutions to these problems.
It's a well-done bottle episode.
However, I think that you could have breezed past this scene in maybe like a 20-minute action scene. I really, really do. I don't think you needed to devote an entire 45 minutes, 50 minutes to this one hostage situation. And that's after episode 7. All the episodes to me feel padded. You feel the length of every episode at this point. I think they could have chopped them down into maybe 2 or 3 episodes towards the end, just for brevity's sake. We don't need a whole episode where they're trying to cure. Where Luke Cage has been shot and is wounded and he's walking through the city and he needs to be healed. We don't need a whole episode for that. That can be a part of an episode. We don't need a whole episode where there's this one hostage situation happening. And that's
this. Actually, I'm gonna completely disagree there. I liked the idea of the hostage situation. It added some tension because before that stage, you've got okay. We know that they can kill him with Judas bullets, and we know that Luke can't go really into the spotlight. But they've gone and shot one of the characters who we've got to know, and therefore the tension is slightly higher because not only does Luke have to he's thinking, should I sacrifice myself or should I kind of work for it tactically and see what I can get done? But they're also racing against time to save her life.
Yeah. And
she's the only person who can say Luke is innocent. So he's got ulterior motives there himself. And from that entire episode, it's good. I like it. I think the other 2 episodes from the series are definitely not as good.
And I think we should talk about Diamondback a little bit more. I know we've got to kind of speed up with this, but I like the character. I think he's played very, very well. And I don't know if you picked up on this. If we're tying it in, doesn't really tie into the Marvel Universe at all, but he's a guy who is very intense with his speech and likes quoting the Bible a lot. And he delivers a line where I think he says, "Do you read the Bible?" And I don't know if that was explicitly on the nose, but that's absolutely a Samuel Jackson Pulp Fiction reference. Even until the end where he pulls out his costume and he lifts up the briefcase and there's the gold glow from it, just like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. Really a lot of parallels going on with that. I liked the scene where, I can't remember which episode it is now, where Luke Cage walks into a church and it cuts between him as a kid and kind of fleshes out and develops a little bit more the backstory between
that.
Him
I believe was the second to last episode, but in that episode, it just went on for too goddamn long. And I know that it was in the comic books, but the brother kind of angle, it wasn't needed. Maybe even not have him just announce, "Oh, I am your brother." Maybe even keep it secret for series 2.
Yeah, could have been interesting. The whole brother Cain and Abel thing, and I think even Cain and Abel's brought up towards the end.
It is brought up, yeah.
That could be very interesting. That could be done well. I think that the ideas were there. It is very simple. It is a very easy thing to do for in terms of comic books. Just he's your half brother. He wants revenge because you were given more attention than he was as a kid. It's very, very easy.
Luke got arrested for the crime that he committed.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that kind of cancel that out? Wouldn't you want to he took the rap for a crime that shouldn't Luke want revenge over him?
I don't know. It felt very rushed. It felt like we've got rid of Cottonmouth. And let's be honest, Cottonmouth could have absolutely carried all the way through the series.
I think Shades did an okay job of becoming a secondary villain throughout the entire series, but I feel like Cottonmouth could have been maybe even end the series with Mariah, maybe lengthen the first 6 or 7 episodes because they were the good ones. Maybe have a few more episodes in there just to pad it out, and then maybe have the final episode, Mariah's rise to power at the end of series 1, with maybe her stabilizing the community, but her killing Cottonmouth and taking over the power.
And that sets up for Diamondback coming in and her getting involved with the criminal underworld stuff in season 2. Absolutely. Completely agree with that. And I think that would have been much better for the narrative structure of it. I love the Diamondback character, though. I really, really do. He is a great bad guy.
I'm not convinced.
Really?
And I'm not convinced because of the final episode. And the final episode was it wasn't a good fight
I
scene.
will say as well,
It really wasn't.
you were talking earlier about the choreography. You were talking about memorable moments from the previous Marvel series, and you brought the choreography and
Yeah.
the sort of the raid-like uncut fight scene,
Yeah.
which is in series 1 and even bigger and badder in series 2. The choreography in this series, not just in the latter part of this series, the entire series, I thought of Luke Cage was awful. It felt very,
bad.
very cheap. It felt slow. There'd be scenes like really awkward editing as well. There wasn't any fluidity to it. It was very much just like you see a fist come flying, you don't even see it connect, you just see someone fly across a hallway. It looked very Daredevil managed for me, although it was a TV show, it blended the line between television and film for me. The heights they went to that kind of showed us what can be done now with superhero TV. This series, after episode 7, for me, felt
I've
very
worked it out.
TV.
I've worked it out, and here's what it is. Before episode 7, you've got a very kind of hard-hitting drama, very well done, very high standard. After that, it switched over to the blaxploitation genre. Completely.
Yeah.
In fact, in the final fight scene of the final episode, I want to see someone do this online. I want them to cut in blam and kapow into each punch, because that's what it felt like. It really did.
I'd have kind of liked a series like that, in all honesty. If they're going to bring in elements of the blaxploitation, just go all out with it. Make it like Black Dynamite, and make it awesome.
Shaft.
Yeah, or Shaft, exactly. And Shaft gets referenced quite a lot in the first couple of episodes, I think, and sort of like black icons.
But, okay, here's my problem with the final fight scene, because this really was meant to be the pinnacle, the peak of the series. It points out, oh, look, he's got a weakness on his back. We need to attack that. That is just the generic, oh, yeah, that's his weakness, aim for the weakness. He doesn't even aim for the weakness.
No, and we both said that, didn't we? There's a whole moment where it's framed like a video game where... basically Willis Stryker's in this badass suit, which is a nice reference to the comic books. It's not completely comic book accurate, but he has the kind of striped yellow body armor underneath with the green collared jacket over the top.
It looks retro.
It does look retro, and he's got this sweet helmet as well. And he's got this backpack which supercharges this glove he's wearing to give him equal strength, if not a little bit more maybe, to Luke Cage. And there's a whole moment where, you know, he's wailing on Luke Cage, he's on the ropes, and then it cuts back to him, and he looks at the pack on the back, which is supplying the power. And me and you both thought, okay, he's going to rip that off his back, and then it's going to be a completely one-sided fight to the end. And nothing really comes off it. It's a really random camera shot and sequence of editing, which really amounted to nothing.
Not only that, but even towards the end of the episode, nothing happened. Literally, nothing happened at all during that episode. That episode could have been completely cut into maybe like a 5-minute fight scene, and that's it.
And it suffers from, I always call it Tolkien writing syndrome, and I'm going to get a lot of angry Tolkien fans writing me about that, but you end with the climax, and the climax of this was taking down Willis Stryker. That was the end. But then it goes on for like another half hour with stuff setting up with,
the Lord of the Rings, the 7 different endings there is to Lord of the Rings.
Not so much with the end, it's more for the books, because there's a whole part in Lord of the Rings where Saruman comes back at the end in the book and has taken over the Shire, and then they have to stop him. Thankfully, they cut that out in the movies. But really, the fight was just really underwhelming for me. And again, the choreography was really bad. It felt really cheap. It felt like a fan-made movie. In fact, I would see fan-made movies that are made better than the fight scene at the end of this. And I like what they were trying to do. It did feel a little bit too late, though, with the whole, what we're talking about, like setting up the whole brother role between the two. It felt very easy. But I liked that they showed the history of them, where Luke Cage is boxing, and Willis is holding the punching bag, and he's even punching himself. Luke Cage has got gloves on, and Willis Stryker's just punching it bare fist. I love that kind of stuff. And intercut with a much better fight, I think, a much more dramatic and emotionally empowered fight would have been...
Or maybe start the episode. Here's what you do. You start the episode with the flashback to the punching in the ring and the fight scene, and then it flashes forward to him finally confronting him, and maybe even at the end, taking off his battery pack, and then Stryker being kind of led on the floor, just like, go on then, kill me.
Yeah.
You're always better than me. And him maybe forgiving him and maybe give him like a hearty hug or something like that.
Yeah. Instead, we get
Tear-jerking
like
moments,
a
you know?
really cringeworthy Luke, 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 Luke chant
Why
from all
haven't the
people.
police officers shot them yet?
Yeah, and it felt very much like, to me, I like the whole image of it where I can't remember the line. It is my favourite side character in the whole series. I just cracked up laughing when he said it. I think they're talking smack about each other's mum. And then,
Yeah.
like, a passerby says, like, "Oh, hell no, kick his ass. He just brought up your mum," or something like that. And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I like that it was very street level. It reminded me of the end of Rocky V, which ends in a street fight between Rocky and Tommy Gunn. And it's very much everyone's like, back off. This is between them. This is, well, in the context of Luke Cage, this is
Air it
Harlem.
out.
This is Harlem. This is how things are done. This is how people take care of their problems. Get on with it. But it just felt cheap, and for a superhero thing, and for the first 7 episodes, the production value looked great. The scenery, the lighting, the editing, the music, just everything complemented it really well. And it kind of fell flat in this, to the point where I really don't care for Diamondback as a villain. And comparing it to Jessica Jones, it reminded me, and that series does a similar thing where it's Kilgrave, 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 and then we introduce Nuke, which is the cop who takes the pills and goes a little bit insane. And it's like, you introduce the villain, it's like, you don't care.
With him, you can kind of see him slowly going insane throughout the entire series. You can get a hint at it, and it completely destroys him. But he is a villain who is out to get the villain. Whilst with Diamondback, he just completely takes over. Like, that's the difference. You can see why he's become a villain, because he wants to be strong enough to take down this person who has taken over his life. Whilst with Diamondback, he's just kind of introducing, he's like, oh, he's bad already. Okay, that's fine. Oh, and he's also his brother. Oh, and he has this, conveniently, he has this bullet that can kill Luke Cage, and conveniently, he has this suit that can kill Luke Cage. It's just, it feels so tacked on at the end.
It's very comic booky at the end, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have to remember that this series takes place in the same universe with a talking raccoon and a talking tree, which is still great to even think about that. But
I know, but that is camp. That is camp kind of good.
The Netflix shows have developed a much more darker,
hard-edged one, and yet this felt not hard-edged at the end. It was very hard-edged toward the start, and then it became soft. It went safe, very safe.
Yeah, and
I think that's it.
I want to talk sort of briefly about how it wraps up and sets up, and I want to talk about a few of the Easter eggs. I'll go for one. One of my favourites was when he breaks out of prison and he's finding clothes, and he dresses in his first ever comic book appearance from like issue 1 of Luke Cage, the very bright, flamboyant, classic 70s clothes. Almost wish that had been his costume all the way through. That would have been amazing. We talked about the whole Jericho bullet. No, sorry, Jericho. That's from Iron Man. The Judas bullet, sorry, was derived from the metal from the crashed Chitauri ships. I thought that was a great way to bring it in. They kind of alluded to the incident being a reason for the housing prices and things like that in Daredevil, but this was really like plot-centric metal from the alien ship. Loads of references to Jessica Jones and Daredevil, the end of it where Luke is heading back to prison. That's where we leave off from, is in the car, and he says sometimes backwards to move forwards. Echo in Pop. There's also a kind of a rousing speech he gives in the police station, which inspires the police, and I think they're going to come much more towards his side in the next series once he's ironed all this thing out about going back to jail. So it did have elements like that, and although I said that the ending does go on, it does say a lot. I liked what they did with Misty Knight, and we haven't really talked much about her. I like that throughout the entire series, she's wrestling between Luke Cage's way of dealing things as being a vigilante against the system. And there's a great moment where they have Mariah in custody and they've got evidence on her. They know she's lying. It's a great moment of like vulnerability in Mariah as well. And ultimately, it all slips through her fingers because she didn't follow the system. If she'd have followed the system, I think her boss says, like, we would have her in custody right now. But she's had to walk tonight because of you. This was all on you because you didn't listen to me. You didn't keep me in the loop. And I think it's a great way to leave her character. I mean, this is a character that's gone through everything. Like, she's had her partner was a crooked cop who got killed. She didn't know about that. A whole precinct was kind of scrutinizing her and not believing her. She's been told to keep bringing Luke Cage in, but she's always sided with him because she knows he's a good guy. You also had a little bit of clash between her and Claire as well. I do like the relationship between Claire and Luke, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes. There's that moment, a great bit where they're flirting. There's this whole thing of like, let's go and get coffee, which is code.
Yeah.
And she goes like,
I don't drink coffee.
I don't
And
drink
funny
coffee.
enough, I think at the end he says, "Oh, actually, I do drink coffee. I just don't usually drink coffee."
Yeah, and I think he goes, what is she Spanish? I think is she Spanish?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
He goes, I hear the Spanish blend is very tasty, or something like that. And she goes, that might be the corniest thing I've ever heard you say, and that's like a kind of running back and forth between them. But she goes, but it doesn't stop it from being true, and just sips the coffee. I was like, oh yes, this is what I want. This is great back and forth between the two, and I like Claire as a character. I like these two together. I want to see that develop more. And the end musical number was brilliant. End it on that pan out, that wide shot of Harlem driving across the bridge with this music playing. I loved it, and it's setting Shades up in a great way as well when his rise to power. He's kind of second in the front. There's even that weird, awkward, possible relationship developing between Mariah and Shades. She gives him that kiss at the end, but it's not like a passionate kiss. It's not even like a kind of relationship kiss. I don't know if it's a kiss to thank him. It reminded me kind of the end of Nightcrawler between Gyllenhaal and his TV boss, where they're kind of in a relationship right now, but there's no love there. It's kind of just they're both people
purely business.
Purely
they
business.
Both help each other, and therefore they feel like they are obliged to give something back.
Which was great. I love that moment. He gets a new pair of shades. And it'll be interesting to see if Shades wants to even overthrow Mariah, which is going to happen at some point, I think. She's going to put a foot out of line. But he's establishing that trust. So I do like where it ended. I loved the last 10, 15-minute montage. I thought that worked really well.
But the rest of that episode and the rest of the series towards the tail end just didn't hit.
Yeah. I think I've pretty much said everything. There's probably loads of references that I've missed. As not knowing the Luke Cage comics, I really can't pick up on all his mannerisms. As I said, like Sweet Christmas, I guess that's something that's said a lot in the comics. But I can't tell you what's in the comics in terms of his origin or where it leads or any possible storylines or any possible characters. So I've pretty much said everything I can on Luke Cage. I still think it's a solid series, and I would highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the best things Netflix has ever put out. However, I do think that the latter part of the series pales in comparison to what was set up.
Out of the 3 Netflix shows that we have reviewed from 2016, which was our kind of best picks 2016 almost. Very quickly, where would you rate them? What would be the order? Because personally for me, at number 3, I'd have Luke Cage. And number 2, I would have Stranger Things. At number 1, BoJack Series 3.
As is a completely different order then. I think for pure nostalgia factor, and sort of, not even originality to storytelling, but really just like a whole new approach to how I've seen Netflix series play out in like a short little novel story. I'm going to put Stranger Things at number 1. Again, although that kind of had an ending where I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. 2, I would put Luke Cage, because I do like how it fitted in with the Marvel Universe. I liked discovering things about a character I didn't know. And it's also a series I think I could watch again and again and pick up.
I would watch the first 7 episodes again, but I'd watch the first 7 episodes, but I wouldn't watch past that.
Yeah, same here, actually.
Whilst with BoJack, I that's too much, man.
You're currently going through a second viewing, though, of them all, aren't you? So, I mean, I love BoJack. We talked at length about all 3 series and the themes, and I absolutely love that. None of these are bad shows by any stretch of the imagination. I guess I'm just more into my superheroes and 80s-ness. But yeah, I think I've pretty much said everything on this series. I guess I'll just say, if we go in for favourite scene, other than episode 7, I love the scene, and I feel like I should have one now. I've got like a cityscape canvas. I just need like a big canvas of TV behind me right now. Hail to the King. The bit where Cornell beats the guy into the ground. I think it was in episode 1 or episode 2. That was probably my favourite scene. Do you have a favourite scene? And we'll round out.
My favourite scene was, I'd say, the scene where he is breaking out of the rubble, and it's reflecting him breaking out of the prison.
Cool.
My other favourite scene would have been the manifest scene of Mariah becoming a more powerful figure.
Yeah. And I need to watch that episode again. I could just watch that episode on its own, I think. But yeah, I've got 15 minutes to get to my showing of Doctor Strange. But that'll
You have to drive.
It's not too far. We'll get there. Plus, there's trailers.
But
yeah, that'll do it for our review on Luke Cage, and also kind of the concluded episode in our 2016 Netflix guide. We realised there have been many Netflix shows out this year.
If you want us to do more, then give us the name of the show. As long as it's been out this year, obviously. We will watch through it if we can, and we may be able to do a review on it given once we finish that show.
Yeah, we'll say final episode for now, because watching any kind of TV show is a lot of hours. It is a lot of commitment. But yeah, if you can recommend any, please do drop it below. Or any comments on Luke Cage, anything we may have missed, anything we may have not talked about, please do drop us a comment, and we'll try to reply to everyone's comments.
Chris, if you need to go, you can go. I will close this out if
It's
needed.
fine. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, more movie reviews. We'll have an update video very soon. And tonight we will be going live for our new movie review on Doctor Strange. Really looking forward to it. Hope it's good. Again, like Luke Cage, it's a character I know nothing about, so I'm going pretty much cold into it. And we'll be live tonight around 9 o'clock, I would say, UK time. But yeah, so that'll do it from us, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Gaming Savvy as well, don't forget.
Yes, subscribe to our channel, and then subscribe to Gaming Savvy as well.
That's the one.
Yeah, see you guys.
Latest.